vacation. We went to Monterey, California from Las Vegas. Spent a month there and a little less than a week in Lake Tahoe, in South Lake Tahoe. So that was nice to get away from the hot weather. In fact, it was great in Monterey because I was able to basically work all day if I wanted to. You know, besides all the activities and the sights and everything that we saw, I was able to do a fair amount of work on the van anyway. Mostly concentrating on the electrical system. And I got electrical system, I don't know, probably 95% done, 90% done, something like that. And it was nice being able to work there. I was working so much that the neighbor thought that we lived there. We did an Airbnb, and I was working so much on the van. She thought that I'd moved in, because I didn't seem to be doing any vacation activities. But anyway, in this video, I want to talk about some of the problems I had, in the build. The electrical system worked out very well. The proof of the pudding was that, with my Instant Pot and solar, I was able to cook some chicken. I was able to cook some beans. I made some tacos on a little camping trip that we took at the end there. On the way back from Lake Tahoe, I stopped near Bishop, and I camped out with the girls. We had 8 miles of washboard road where I was able to confirm that I got most of the rattles out of the van, so I was happy with that. But in this video, I want to talk about the problems that we had, and in particular, right off the bat, right out of the gate, coming out of Las Vegas, I got on the highway for about 15 minutes, and things started to happen. So stay tuned. I'll let you know. So I'm tooling down the highway, and all of a sudden I hear this bang, bang, and then rattle, rattle, rattle. And I couldn't figure out what the heck was going on. The bang was really loud, and the rattle, it responded every time I hit a bump in the road. So I had a pretty good idea of what that was. I think it was the PV panel rattling around inside the U-channel. Now, to refresh your memory about how this works, here's a video of me extracting the panel. This is actually a pretty neat system. I've done this several times now, probably 20 times, and I use that little box to stand on as a real stable platform for me to, better than a ladder actually, because I'm able to put both feet on that box, and then I can, once I get the panel, I can just step down. So anyway, that's the way it's supposed to work. I'm supposed to be able to pull that panel away from the rack. This is what it looks like with the rack pulled out. You got this U-channel. Now that U-channel is, obviously wider than the PV panel. So the PV panel rattles around in there, and that's my problem. Now when I want to put the PV panel down, set it down into the stationary frame, then I remove this little strap here and I tighten it down. I've got a screw there, and that holds the angle frame, or the hinged frame, the 3-sided hinged frame, securely to the stationary frame. So I didn't think that was rattling, but nevertheless I had to figure out a way to make that PV panel stop rattling inside the 3-sided hinged frame. So the solution to the rattling involved installing some pieces of metal on top of the PV frame. And I used some stakes that I made. Now these stakes are intended to secure the PV panel when I pull it out and I put it 50 feet away in the sunlight, and I'm parked in the shade, and I just need to secure it so that it doesn't blow away. But I was able to use these stakes plus a few other pieces of metal to secure the PV frame inside the rack. So here you see how this works. I slide the stake inside the 3-sided frame over the PV panel, and then I have a screw on top that I tighten down, which clamps that stake to the PV panel and pushes it down against the U-channel to hold it in place. Now the thing that I didn't think about, or I didn't appreciate, was the fact that this PV panel frame itself is pretty pretty weak, pretty thin, and actually, if you secure this in a couple of places, it's not enough because there's enough give in that thing that it'll still rattle. So I found out ultimately that I had to create, 8 places where I would secure this PV panel, against the U-frame in order to keep it from rattling. But that finally solved the problem. Now, it's easy to do this on the 3 sides of the hinged frame, but on the open side there, the side closest to the camera, that presents a little bit of a challenge. So the solution is to have another piece of U-channel which is separate from the 3-sided open hinged frame, and I put this piece of U-channel over the PV panel before I insert it down into the stationary frame. And then I have basically a 4-sided U-channel that I can use to clamp down that PV panel. Now, I didn't particularly want to do this. I mean, each one of these steps makes it a little bit less convenient to pull this thing in and out, but nevertheless, I think the goal of having a removable PV panel and one that can tilt up at any angle is worth all of this trouble. Now, I made this piece out of actually 2 pieces, and the reason is because when I'm not using it to secure the PV panel, I'm going to be using each of these U-channels as an extension onto the back of my van that will allow me to roll my kitchen out into the tent, as I've described in previous videos. So that's the reason why I'm using, so this is actually a good place for me to store the U-channel while I'm traveling, and then when I'm stationary at a camp and I've got the PV panel tilted up or whatever, then I just take that that piece off, and then I use that as my channel extensions to roll my kitchen out. So it had a dual purpose there. So here's what the bar looks like when it's positioned over the PV panel just before I'm inserting it into the stationary frame. And now here's an overall view of the entire system, which finally solved my rattling problems. And I know that it solved my rattling problems because I had 8 miles of really bad washboard road that I traveled over on our camping trip. And during that trip, I didn't get any rattles at all. I'm able to tie this strap. I'm able to tie the stationary frame and the 3-sided hinged frame and the 4th U-channel piece in order to make everything solid and secure. So it's a little bit more hassle than I had hoped to have originally, but finally I think that this is a good solution. So I'm tootling down the highway, and I still hear this bang bang, rattle rattle, rattle rattle, and I had some clamps with me, so I clamped the PV frame in a couple places and got back on the highway, and I went down. I could hear this bang bang, rattle rattle, half as many rattles. All right, so I said, oh, all right. So then I stopped again, and I put in 4 clamps, to clamp this PV panel. And I finally got it to the point where I was going down the highway, and I'm listening. I hear this bang, bang, no rattles. And I still can't figure out what the heck this bang, bang is, because, I think I've got this thing clamped up the kazoo. Why is this PV panel still giving me this bang, bang business? So I got so frustrated that I finally stopped, and I took the PV panel out. I completely removed it. I put it inside the van, and I started up down the highway, and then bang, bang. I thought, what the heck? It took me a long time till I finally figured out what was going on. And it all had to do with this little piece right here. I designed this piece so it would swivel. And I wanted it to swivel because I want to attach my skirt, and I didn't know exactly what the angle was going to be, so I made it so that I could move it, rotate it around in order to create a flush surface to attach the skirt. So, but unfortunately, if this thing is perpendicular, if it's flush to the wind, I'm getting this huge, the wind will cause that thing to bend, and it will bang against the roof, bang against the roof. I finally solved the problem by just simply
switching the thing up, turning the thing up so that it was horizontal to the wind, and then I never had any more problems after that. But that thing was driving me nuts. Now, this is not a problem that I'm going to have ultimately when I have the skirt on there, but it did alert me to I need to pay attention to those wind forces at highway speeds because they're strong, and that means I need to have a beefy skirt up there to deflect this wind so that it doesn't start pushing my stuff all over the place. So this video is probably long enough, but I do want to tell you about something I'm going to talk about next time. This is another problem that I encountered in doing the electrical, and it had to do with these little switches, that switch over to the left that you use to switch on your DC lights or various other things, and also your 12-volt DC plugs also have these these spades, and you need these spade connectors to connect your cables or your wires to these devices. And the problem here is that those little switches and the DC plug, the spades are very, very small. And the spade connector that you typically buy you buy that based on the size of the conductor that you're using. I was using number 12 conductor all through my cabins, so I bought the appropriate size. Now the problem is that when you buy the spade connector based on a number 12 wire, the actual clip or the grab or the spade, the thing that actually grabs the spade is too big. All right, so I was faced with the problem of the thing coming off all the time. And in the next video, I'll tell you how I solved that problem to create a really secure connection using these spade connectors that I had already bought and my 12-volt or my number 12 DC wire. So stay tuned, and I think that'll be pretty interesting.